April 1814. The most powerful man on the planet steps off a ship onto a rock. 220 kilometers of land, 12,000 inhabitants. That's what they gave him. His name? Napoleon Bonaparte. Every crowned head in Europe sleeps soundly that night, certain they've seen the last of him. Certain he'll rot on this speck in the Mediterranean, his power snuffed out forever. They were wrong. In 292 days, Napoleon will stand in Paris again, ruling France. How does a man abandoned by every ally, banished by an entire continent, with just 700 soldiers to his name, seize control of the most powerful nation in Europe? Here's exactly what happened. Elba, May of 1814. Napoleon Bonaparte wakes every morning on an island so small a horse can carry him across it in 2 hours. This is his life now. The commander who once directed 500,000 troops now surveys a harbor full of fishing boats. The man who rewrote Europe's legal codes now settles squabbles between farmers. His home? A modest villa with an ocean view. Small rooms, plain furniture. Nothing like Versailles. Nothing like the imperial palaces he once filled across a continent. Just a house on a hill, staring out at water he's forbidden to cross. The British have posted a watchman, Colonel Neil Campbell. His job is simple. Make sure Napoleon stays put. Campbell drops in regularly, observes, sends reports back to London. The prisoner seems content. Campbell's letters describe a man who gardens, rides horses, reads books. What Campbell doesn't record, or doesn't grasp, is what Napoleon is reading. Every newspaper he can get his hands on. Every letter smuggled through loyal contacts. Every fragment of intelligence about what's happening in France. And what's happening in France is exactly what Napoleon expected. King Louis XVIII is a disaster. Soldiers who bled for Napoleon across 20 years of war, dismissed without pensions, humiliated, sent home empty-handed. Officers who built their careers under his banner, replaced by aristocrats who hid in England while the fighting raged. Citizens who believed in revolution, equality, the empire, watching everything they sacrificed for get torn apart. France is furious. Napoleon drinks in every detail. Visitors start arriving, former officers, loyal supporters. They come quietly, claiming they're just passing through. They sit with Napoleon, and their stories all point the same direction. France despises Louis XVIII. The army wants Napoleon back. The people suffer, and the common wisdom says nothing can be done. Napoleon is finished. Everyone believes that. Everyone except Napoleon. He starts running the numbers. He carries the French coastline in his head, memorized. He knows where royalist troops mass thick and where they thin out. He knows which regiments served under him longest, which generals still keep his portrait on the wall, which roads from the southern coast to Paris avoid royalist garrisons entirely. He knows that Campbell, his British minder, keeps slipping away to the Italian mainland. A woman there. Regular trips. Predictable gaps in surveillance. Napoleon catalogues every detail. He gardens, he rides, he reads, and he waits for the right moment to launch the most audacious comeback in military history. By February of 1815, everything is in place. Everything except one variable: timing. On the 26th of February, Campbell sails for the Italian coast, a routine visit. He's expected back in 3 days. Napoleon watches the British ship disappear beyond the horizon. Then he turns to his chief of staff. Napoleon Bonaparte is about to invade France with 700 men, against an army of 200,000. His invasion fleet? 7 fishing boats. February 26, 1815. Darkness falls. Napoleon's tiny flotilla sits anchored in Portoferraio harbor, preparing to slip away in silence. No lanterns, no voices. 700 soldiers climb aboard under cover of night. These aren't conscripts, they're veterans. Men who bled at Austerlitz, at Wagram, at Moscow. Men who marched behind Napoleon across every corner of Europe and limped home again. Napoleon paces the dock himself, checking each vessel, speaking to his men. Calm, focused. The same stillness he carried before every major battle. An officer pulls him aside. Emperor, what if royalist troops meet us when we land? Napoleon doesn't break stride. The officer waits. By midnight, everything is ready. Napoleon steps aboard his flagship, cleverly disguised as a British vessel, flying the Union Jack, the same flag that patrols these waters, hunting for exactly this kind of escape attempt. The flotilla glides from the harbor into open water, into blackness, into everything that could go wrong. The crossing takes 3 days. On the second day, a French royalist warship appears on the horizon, bearing straight toward them. If that captain recognizes what he's looking at, this is over. Napoleon sends his soldiers below deck. Then he stations himself at the bow, wearing his full military dress. As the royalist ship pulls alongside, close enough to shout across the gap, Napoleon's captain calls out casually, "Quote 4, the royalist officer leans over his railing. __, quote _5 __. The two ships pass each other and sail in opposite directions. March 1st, 1815. Napoleon's 700 men step onto French soil and begin walking north. 1,100 kilometers to Paris. The royalist army is already scrambling to cut them off. But here's the question nobody thinks to ask. Why isn't Napoleon hiding? Why isn't he taking back roads? Why is he marching straight toward a force 10 times his size? In 6 days, outside the gates of Grenoble, the answer will become impossible to miss. March 7th, 1815, Grenoble. Napoleon stops his column 1 kilometer from the royalist regiment blocking the road. Then he does something no one on either side expects. He steps forward, alone, unarmed, walking directly toward leveled muskets. His officers grab at him. Napoleon doesn't look back. We'll see. He walks the empty stretch between his 700 men and the regiment sent to destroy him. The road goes quiet. Nothing but boot heels on packed earth. The royalist soldiers watch him come, muskets raised, fingers on triggers. Their commander barking orders. "Hold the line! Fire on my command!" Nobody moves. But something is shifting inside those ranks. These aren't mercenaries. These aren't foreign conscripts. These are French soldiers. Men who served under Napoleon for years, who fought his campaigns, who carried his eagles across a continent. And now they're watching him walk toward them, alone. An unarmed man in a grey coat stepping calmly into the mouths of loaded weapons. No one fires. Napoleon closes to 50 meters, 30, 20, close enough to read their faces. He stops, slowly lifts his hand, removes his hat, and speaks. Not a rousing speech, not a battle cry, a single quiet sentence that carries down the silent road. He pulls his coat wide open, steps forward. Nobody pulls a trigger. The commanding officer keeps screaming orders, but his voice has become irrelevant. Every eye is locked on the figure before them, chest bare, arms spread. The man who marched them through 2 decades of war. The man they once swore to follow into death. One musket drops, then a second, a third. Then a voice explodes from somewhere deep in the formation, and the regiment doesn't scatter. It surges forward, straight toward him. Men pour across a road, clutching his hands, grabbing fistfuls of his coat, tears streaming down their faces, laughter breaking through sobs. The royalist force dispatched to arrest Napoleon has just become his army. Not a single bullet fired. Napoleon stands in the center of the chaos, still, composed, utterly unsurprised. As though he'd known exactly how this would unfold. Because he had. This was never a military gambit. It was surgery on the soul. Napoleon didn't need to overpower the French army. He needed to remind them who they were. 30 seconds, that's all it took. By nightfall, Grenoble throws open its gates. Napoleon walks into the city without a shot. 6 days on French soil, 0 rounds spent. But what happens next defies reason. The king's most trusted commander is already driving south with the largest force in France, Marshal Ney. And before leaving Paris, he made one promise to King Louis, a promise every courtier heard. He would drag Napoleon back in an iron cage. So what happens when the man who swore that oath meets Napoleon face to face? March 10th, Paris. King Louis XVIII calls his most loyal marshal to the royal palace. The room swells with courtiers, generals, ministers, all watching. Ney strides in, medals gleaming across his chest, spine rigid. The most decorated soldier in the nation. The king speaks plainly, loud enough for every ear in that chamber. Marshal Ney, Bonaparte marches on Paris. I need you to stop him. Ney doesn't blink. He draws himself even taller, delivers his vow before the entire court. __quote, _1, 3, ___. Those words, exactly. Iron cage. The room explodes with applause. The king nods. Ney leaves to assemble his force. 6,000 soldiers under his command, disciplined, armed, sworn to the crown. Royal orders in his hand, personal honor burning in his chest. He drives south, carrying everything required to crush Napoleon's march in a single afternoon. His officers radiate confidence. His troops stand ready. No one in that army questions what's coming. They hold the numbers. They hold the ground. The full weight of the French crown stands behind them. Napoleon, meanwhile, 700 men and a grey coat. March 14th. The two forces close the distance, and Ney starts receiving field reports on Napoleon's advance. Nothing in those dispatches matches what he expected. No battles, no resistance, whole regiments switching sides, crowds flooding the roadsides. Officers Ney has known for 20 years now walking beside Napoleon. Then his own soldiers start receiving letters. From old brothers in arms, from relatives, from friends. Come back, the emperor has returned. Ney commands his men to burn the letters. Keep marching, stay sharp. They're closing in. Then Napoleon does something no one anticipated. He sends Ney a letter. Personal, handwritten, not a military order, not an ultimatum, just words. Between two men who bled through 20 years of the same wars. The exact contents have never been confirmed, but that night, alone in his tent, Ney reads it, and something breaks open inside him. The next morning, Ney stands before his 6,000 soldiers. He holds the letter high, reads it aloud, then stops. Looks across their faces, the medals pinned to their chests, the scars carved into their skin from campaigns fought under one flag. He says, 2 seconds of dead silence. Then 6,000 soldiers explode into a wall of sound. Later that same day, Ney rides toward Napoleon's advancing column. Napoleon spots him approaching. He halts the entire march, waits. Ney dismounts, stands before the man for whom he has just betrayed a king. Neither speaks. Then Napoleon steps forward, pulls him into an embrace. My friend, You have arrived precisely when I needed you. Ney says nothing. 6 days ago, he swore an oath to a king. He has shattered it. 20 years before that, he swore a different oath to a different man. The older promise won. Napoleon now commands 7,000 soldiers. Paris is 3 days away. King Louis XVIII receives the news about Ney that very evening. The color drains from his face. He turns to his ministers. Silence. There is nothing left to say. Every piece on the board, gone. Every army, every general, every city has turned. He stands, walks to his private chambers, and begins to pack. The King of France is about to flee his own capital in the dead of night. Napoleon has not fired a single bullet to make this happen. March 20th, 1815. The throne of France has sat empty for exactly 6 hours when Napoleon Bonaparte enters Paris. King Louis XVIII slipped away at midnight. No announcement, no farewell, no final proclamation. Just a carriage dissolving into darkness, heading north toward the Belgian border. His servants found his chambers empty that morning. The King of France had abandoned his own capital under cover of night. And now, 6 hours later, the man who caused his flight has arrived. Napoleon's column enters Paris from the south. Word tears through the city faster than the soldiers can march. __quote _19__. People flood the streets. Windows crack open. Crowds mass on every corner. By the time Napoleon reaches the Tuileries Palace, the street outside is so packed his carriage cannot move. Soldiers try to clear a path. Impossible. The crowd is not hostile, the opposite. People scream his name, hurl their hats skyward, reach for the carriage, weep, laugh, press forward just to touch the vehicle. Napoleon steps out. The roar hits like a physical force. He does not speak. He does not need to. He stands there while Paris loses its mind around him. His officers lock into a tight cordon, fighting toward the palace entrance. The crowd makes it nearly impossible. Bodies surge from every direction, hands grasping at his coat, his fingers, his hat. Old soldiers shove through the mass for a handshake. Women throw flowers. Children ride on shoulders, craning over the sea of heads. Inside the Tuileries, Napoleon walks through rooms he has not seen in 11 months. Everything sits exactly as King Louis XVIII left it. The furniture, the paintings, official documents still stacked on the desk. The king fled so fast he didn't even sort his papers. That night, Paris celebrates. 19 days, that is all it took. Napoleon landed with 700 soldiers on March 1st. He enters Paris on March 20th. Between those dates, not a single battle. Not a single shot fired in anger. Every army sent to stop him joined him instead. Every city ordered to bar its gates threw them wide open. But here is what Napoleon grasps that the cheering crowds outside do not. Every monarch in Europe has just received the same terrifying dispatch. Napoleon has returned. They are already mobilizing. 700,000 soldiers are closing on France from every direction. Napoleon has exactly one option: strike first. Find them before they can combine. Destroy them one by one. What he does next is so brilliant that military strategists still study it. And what goes wrong is so devastating that historians still argue over it 2 centuries later. Napoleon commands 125,000 soldiers against a problem that looks impossible. 700,000 enemies converging from all sides. His solution is so elegant, so precise, so mathematically perfect that it should have worked. It nearly did. The plan is this. 2 Allied armies are currently positioned in Belgium. Wellington's British hold the western flank. Blücher's Prussians occupy the east. close enough to support each other, but not yet unified. A gap exists between them, and Napoleon sees it. Strike Blücher first. Destroy him before Wellington can respond. Then wheel west and crush Wellington before Blücher recovers. 2 armies, 2 battles, 48 hours. The math works. The timing checks out. On paper, flawless. June 16th, 1815. Napoleon slams into Blücher at Ligny. The fighting is vicious, merciless. 80,000 French troops collide with 84,000 Prussians. 8 hours of unrelenting carnage. By nightfall, Blücher's army is broken and fleeing. Blücher himself gets hurled from his horse, nearly crushed under hooves. The Prussians are done. Napoleon's plan has worked exactly as designed. Now he needs to finish it. He turns to Marshal Grouchy. 33,000 men. One order. Follow Blücher. Don't let him regroup. Don't let him reach Wellington. Keep him running. Grouchy nods and disappears east into the forest. Napoleon pivots west, toward Wellington. June 17th. The French army slog through driving rain toward a small Belgian village. Waterloo. Wellington has positioned his forces along a ridge south of the village. Classic defensive setup. High ground, protected flanks. He's been reinforcing this position for days, waiting for exactly this moment. But Wellington is also gambling. Blücher has promised him reinforcements. If the Prussians arrive in time, Wellington has the numbers to hold. If they don't, he faces Napoleon's full force alone. Everything depends on Grouchy keeping Blücher pinned down. June 18th, 11:30 a.m. Napoleon delays his attack. Last night's rain has turned the ground to soup. His cannons can't roll through the muck. He waits for the earth to firm up. 2 hours, maybe 3. It seems like nothing. A small tactical pause. It is the pause that destroys him, because while Napoleon watches mud dry, Blücher is already marching. Not east, not away from the fight, west, straight toward Waterloo. And Grouchy? Grouchy is nowhere near him. Grouchy is blundering through a Belgian forest in the wrong direction, following his orders to the letter, while the entire war tilts on what happens in the next few hours. Noon. Napoleon finally unleashes his assault. Wellington's line refuses to buckle. French infantry storms up that ridge, gets shredded, falls back, storms up again. British squares lock tight and will not shatter. Cavalry thunders forward. Artillery hammers the positions. Hours of savage, grinding combat, and Wellington's line bends but does not break. 3 o'clock. Napoleon's patience is fraying. Wellington should be finished by now. No room to retreat, no reinforcements coming. He should be clinging to survival, slowly bleeding out. But Wellington holds. Every breach the French punch through, reserves appear to seal it. Every charge that should crack the formation gets swallowed whole. Napoleon checks his watch, looks at the ridge, then turns his eyes east. 4 o'clock. Napoleon lifts his telescope toward the far horizon. His officers crowd beside him, staring at the same distant point. A dust cloud. For one breath, hope. Maybe it's Grouchy. Maybe help has finally come. The cloud pushes closer. Flags emerge through the haze. Black eagles on yellow. Prussian colors. Not Grouchy. Blücher. 30,000 fresh Prussian troops slam into Napoleon's right flank at the exact moment his army has nothing left to give. 20 kilometers away, Grouchy's officers hear the thunder of Waterloo's guns rolling across the countryside. They beg him, march toward the sound. Grouchy won't do it. His orders say, follow Blücher. He follows his orders. While the battle that will determine Europe's fate rages on without him, Napoleon plays his last card. the Imperial Guard, his personal reserve, the most elite fighting force France has ever produced. These men have never tasted defeat, never retreated. They exist for exactly this moment. They march up the ridge in flawless formation, eagles raised against the smoke-blackened sky. This is everything Napoleon has built, staked on a single advance. Wellington watches them climb. He waits, lets them close the distance. Then he stands in his stirrups, levels his sword forward. Every British cannon fires at once. The guard stumbles, staggers, keeps coming. A second volley tears through them, and then something happens that has not happened in 20 years of Napoleonic warfare. The Imperial Guard breaks, turns, runs. When the rest of Napoleon's army sees the Guard fleeing, something inside them shatters. In one collective heartbeat, the entire French force understands. It is over. The retreat dissolves into panic. Panic dissolves into total collapse. Every man for himself, clawing through Belgian mud while Prussian cavalry rides them down from behind. Napoleon stands on a hilltop, watching his army come apart. His marshals crowd around him, begging him to flee. He does not move. Not for a long time. He just watches. Then he turns his horse and rides away. 8 hours. That is how long the battle lasted. The French army, assembled over 19 days without a single shot fired, destroyed in one afternoon. The 100 days that began on a southern beach with 700 men ends here. A field in Belgium, rain falling, everything gone. June 22nd, 1815. Napoleon abdicates for the second time, 4 days after Waterloo. There will be no second Elba, no small Mediterranean island with 12,000 inhabitants and a sea view. The British choose a place from which no man escapes. St. Helena, a volcanic rock in the South Atlantic, 2,000 kilometers from the nearest continent. 4,000 souls live on this speck of land. It becomes Napoleon Bonaparte's final cage. 6 years he spends on that rock. No cannons, no armies to maneuver, no maps to study, just the ocean stretching blue and endless in every direction. A modest house on a low hill, and from that house he dictates his memoirs, his version of events, his story, told and retold to anyone willing to listen. If this story has stayed with you, consider subscribing to support more content like this. Your support is appreciated.